Being that it's 2024, 1994 albums that came out that year, turning 30 this year, and there were some really big major albums at that time. And my question is, were they just big albums, or should 30 years on, should these be considered classics now? And you know, we have other albums that turn 40, that turn 50, and it's like everyone talks about classicness.
Walking to a new record store when you were a kid
Yeah.
and seeing The Clash in classic rock. I
Yeah.
immediately thought, hell no.
right.
But it's
Are these
it's the way of the world, man. This is classic rock now.
anything?
So class, yeah.
Because
so
it's when it's
is that
like
even still a category? Because
Yeah.
when you say classic rock, people automatically go to Aerosmith.
That's right.
They
I
ought
go, if it's not 70s era,
It's not classic rock, right?
But if I turn on classic rock radio, they're playing 80s and 90s.
Stone Temple Pilots is in there.
That's right.
R.E.M's in there.
I don't know if
Weezer.
good, but
I
definitely,
mean-
definitely these two guys.
But I
for
hear
sure.
Buddy Holly and
Oh,
Buddy
really?
Holly mainly all the time. And
It's
saying
not
himself.
classic
But
rock.
Weezer is not played as much on classic rock as this is played on classic rock.
and yet
radio.
they've got the Beatlesque sound to it. Meaning, like it fits on there perfect. In
You're
terms
right.
of that, the
Yeah.
jingle jangle, right?
Jingle jangle.
But let's talk about some of these. So, all right,
I want to talk about Weezer first because you don't like him.
great, let's do it.
Hated this record when it came out. Man, 94, I thought was just a year
And
of...
I loved it at the time.
when
So,
this came
yeah.
out, I said, get this shit
Yeah.
out of here. This
I liked it until they did Buddy Holly, and I was just like, "What is this, man?"
When I heard
Yeah.
In the Garage, Holiday, and Only in Dreams
Yeah.
is when I fell in love. I went,
Yeah.
wow. But most shit that came out in 94, if you were a new band and you came out after
Yeah.
1993, I was out. I didn't like you.
Yeah.
I didn't care.
Yeah.
I was stuck in my ways. I found the things I loved, and I wasn't budging.
That's so funny to hear. Only because you're 3 years younger than me, but I did the same thing. But then
a couple years earlier.
earlier, right. But I mean, I really cut off at 1992, and then some of
93
yeah,
was the turning point. But
Yeah.
94 was like, 95 was the
Yeah.
complete
Oh,
meteor hitting the earth.
That's right, absolutely. There were a few bands that still dropped some good albums, like in 94, of my era, generation, whatever, 80s rock stuff. Motley Crue's self-titled album, I think, was a really great one. ZZ Top and
Antenna came out.
Was
Antenna
a great
an
one.
Awesome album. Voodoo Lounge was a cool Stones record.
Yeah.
The singles were...
That one did well, but those other ones kind of ran under the radar of stuff. That era of music was over. But yeah, this stuff was exploding. So Weezer, it's funny because I liked it at the time and bought it, and then very quickly grew out of it, and just it wasn't my thing. And every subsequent album has
I
not,
didn't listen to it.
yeah, not done.
Rancid.
Oh, did they have an album in 94?
Let's Go came out in 94. Should have thought to grab
Yeah,
that
we should
one.
have grabbed that one.
So, again, another band.
Right.
I love them right now, but
Mhm.
then I couldn't stand them. I thought, here's a shitty punk rock band just trying to sound like The Clash, a stupid fake singing voice.
Right.
And I absolute disgust. It
where
wasn't
does
until 2003.
Yeah.
I happened to buy Indestructible as a used CD at CD World in Menlo Park, and I said, just for shits and giggles, and I went, wow, I've been missing this.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to go back.
True, very true. I mean, I ended up doing that with Oasis. I was not into them at all originally, and I found them in the late 2000s and ended up becoming a fan of theirs.
That's wild.
So yeah, it's weird.
So Weezer,
Yep.
great record, 30 years.
Okay. Monster from R.E.M.
Fucking loved it. Saw the tour.
Exploded. Yeah. But now, in terms of their catalog and the fact that it's funny, it says 25th anniversary edition on when we're talking about 30 years now. But would you consider this a classic? Amongst all classics. Think
I
about-
don't even know how to define
Yeah.
classic. As you
Is it
brought
still
up this
sound
morning,
as good today as it did
Yes.
then? Do you think that
because it brings me to a point and a place in time when I bought this record.
Yeah, for me, these albums are nostalgic, so I would say, yeah, they're classics.
It was a classic album the minute I put it on.
Right. But in terms of their catalog, is it considered classic, or should
Is
we
it
be
as good
talking
as
Green
Automatic for the
or
People?
Automatic
No.
for the People?
It
Right,
is not.
exactly.
But that's my opinion.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, so I mean, that's kind of the big question on all these. The one you got behind this here, STP Purple.
Now this was
I think that's
this was like a
legit.
spring summer record when this came out. This
Yeah.
came out in the fall of that year. So this record was a record for me for the entire summer. This record will never die.
That's what I
Every
mean.
song is awesome.
I think it's their best album too. I think it was better than Core. And this album here, I think, defined who they were and set them up, and I don't think they've ever matched this going forward. I know you're a huge fan though, liking certain albums. I
Yeah,
don't.
but this, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think it's fair to have to choose. But I love this album very much.
Yeah, you know, you'll do great when you become a dad and your kids ask you which one is your favorite because you don't like to choose. So you'll legitimately be able to not do it.
I'm not becoming a dad.
Yeah. You might already be a dad
Too
and
old
not
for that,
know it. So, you know, here's another one.
Mitchell, was Bjork's Post 94?
93 or 94, I'm not exactly sure.
We should look that up because, you know, that was a shout out. If Bjork's Post was 94, that album was large.
Yeah, and I know. And she's one of those ones I've never, ever been able to get into. Not even a little bit.
Not even a little bit.
Not even a little bit.
Nope.
It just
But
is completely outside of my wheelhouse.
I want to honorably mention because as I'm bringing these up, I just remember a lot of my friends that were females.
We're into that.
Anything that came out female. What was it?
95.
Okay, good.
I mean, debut. Sorry, it was 93.
Almost.
Not post. Debut. 93.
No, I know there's a lot of people that love.
Right, 93?
93.
It blew up in 94, so that's why I remember it so much.
Right. But Soundgarden.
Liz Phair's Exile in Guyville was 94.
That one was an awesome album. I
album.
had that one, loved that
Why didn't
one.
we grab that one? That album to this day holds up as just a raw,
Yeah.
it's beautiful thing.
Of her albums, at least of her catalog, I absolutely think that is a classic. That has got to be one of the high points in there.
Yeah.
And definitely one of the high points, I know you don't like genres, but of alternative rock music. When that came out, there was no one like her in that rock-sounding style singing the way she did.
No.
Right?
She came out, put out a record, here's a bunch of songs,
Yeah.
take it or leave it.
Right.
People call it lo-fi, whatever they want to call it. I don't
It
call
was
it anything.
awesome, but it broke.
That's what she sounded like.
Right. But that also helped to break that type of style of music open, too. It brought it to people's attention, and it was this idea, you don't have to be this overproduced thing.
Just good songs,
Yeah,
good delivery.
Good songs, good delivery will sell it every time.
Yep.
I think that's the case on most of these that are here. But, yeah,
Again,
what do you think of this one, though?
Couldn't stand it when it came out. Love it now.
This one?
I have I didn't like any Soundgarden after
Good
Bad
Lord.
Motorfinger because I have a thing with Bad Motorfinger.
For me, this is one. Okay, see, I loved Bad Motorfinger, and I'm like, is that the classic or is this the classic in their catalog?
Well, again, we've got to define classic. What's
Yeah.
classic to who?
That's right, but I look at it, I'm sort of talking in general to the public, right? Does the public consider
They would consider that.
that a classic?
Yes.
Yeah, no, and I
Semantics,
agree.
right?
Simply
The
based
public are
on
going that.
Black Hole Sun being on it. Which
just
I
in that
hate
song.
that song, but for me it was the video that I thought destroyed it. I love this song until they made the video and they had the big eyes popping out of everyone's head, and I just thought, this is weird.
This record was not Bad Motorfinger enough for me when it came out.
It was not at all. And I remember thinking that. I was like, where is Jesus Christ Pose? God, the heaviness of that.
The last song on the record I go to is Jesus Christ.
Oh.
Rusty Cage. Because you know what? Because they were the singles.
Well, Rusty Cage and Outshine, absolutely. I agree with you. But Sleeping with One Eye Open, Good Eye Open.
Sleeping with my good eye closed.
Whatever. I'm not a lyrics person, but yeah, that song was brutal.
Massive.
Yeah, I love that album. And so when this came out,
Room 1,000 Years Wide.
I love it, but it was a big letdown from that. And now I look back at their catalog, I go to Bad Motorfinger all the time.
Yeah.
I skip over this, but then this one got worn out for me. Is it a classic? Yeah, I think it is a classic. It's just not a classic for me.
Heaviest song, one of the heaviest songs in the world is 4th of July.
Yeah. Yeah, I love My Wave. Second song on here?
It's all right. But I love all Soundgarden, so when I put it on, I don't skip songs I record. I go front to back. And
Exactly.
But songs that go on repeat will always be Let Me Drown and 4th of July.
Now,
And Fresh Tendrils.
what do you think is a, quote, classic album from Sabbath for the Aussie years?
All of them.
Okay. But I you never can give me favorites, but I mean, like, when we're comparing this to, say, Paranoid, right? Or, the third album, it's like, those are classics in my opinion, right? Aerosmith, Rocks, or Toys in the Attic, classics. Now, I don't know if that's just because I grew up where that was being shoved down my throat as a, quote, classic, and I didn't grow up with those albums. I'm coming later into it. Do these hold up next to that?
Yeah.
You think so?
Yep.
Okay. So I think that in and of itself is a telling point of whether or not any of these albums are truly classic albums.
I think Vitology holds up next to it.
See, that I question now. At the time, I would have said, absolutely. I bought that on vinyl. It came out 2 weeks early, grabbed that. But I listened back to it, songs like Bugs and some of those other weird ones that are
Corny,
on there.
but
Yes, but at the time I thought it was the greatest thing. It was like nobody was doing it. It was against the establishment. It was like, here's a song that's not a song, and it's just so.
It was the same thing as anybody from the '70s. Any of the classic, classic. Use the word.
Oh, you did it! You did it!
Any of the prog people,
Yeah.
any of the assholes with interludes.
Yeah,
That's all it is.
that's
It's
right.
an interlude.
It's an interlude, exactly. But it was like now
Let
it
me
was,
give you 30 seconds of garbage before the next song.
yeah.
Because we want to fill out some time. It means something to us. You might find it humorous. You might
Right.
love it. Why throw shit at the wall and see what sticks?
I know, as the album as a whole at the time, I just remember the whole thing, including that song, moved me. But when I go back today, I find it jarring, and I don't like the album as much because it gets broken up by that stuff. Song Corduroy is still my absolute favorite song by the band.
Bothers the shit out of me.
That
I
song?
just played it so much. It was
Oh.
all over the radio.
Yeah,
And again, I was that
Yeah.
kid, man. If it was on the radio and it was on the radio too
Yeah.
much, and if
yeah.
if all the jocks started singing along to
Black
that
Hole
shit
Sun, I love
in high school,
Yeah.
I'm done with it.
When this exploded because
Yeah.
of that, and it was like all of a sudden everybody loved that
People
song.
say, "Don't you love Black Hole Sun?" I said,
No.
Did you listen to any? Do you know anything else on the record?
Right.
And whatever. It
Right.
still sold records. It got the band.
Right.
Whatever.
Right. But you'd consider this one a classic, meaning holding up next to 70s era classic albums that we know. No, you wouldn't.
Not in
Yeah.
that line of terming and
Right.
classic.
And right. And comparing it to their first two albums.
No. 10's
Right.
going to be the record.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Super Unknown's going to be the record.
I don't know that I would put, right, in terms of this video, this idea that we're filming here, I would say this is not a classic. It's 30 years old. It's from a huge band. It did well at the time. But it's
Classic to me. It's classic to you, the people
Right.
that love it. But in
Nostalgia-
terms of that, no.
Nostalgically, it's classic, but not.
I'll fight for that record to
Yeah.
death on
Yeah.
how it holds up against anything else
Right.
that anybody wants to give to me. But if you got to put it in those terms, no.
Right.
Tough one, man.
Yeah, I know,
because
right?
People are always going to go back to the first Crows record.
Second
That to me
Crow-
holds up.
I
That's
don't-
fucking
yeah.
classic.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Again, it was one of those albums, came out on vinyl a couple weeks early, so I picked it up. So, I devoured this
Do
thing.
you still have your original copy?
I do.
White or black?
I don't know. I have to open it and see which one is worth more.
White.
Okay, I'll check. But yeah, I still have mine.
Nice.
I didn't, yeah, no, I was just looking at the price on the back of this. I was like, oh, I didn't know it was worth anything extra. But yeah, no, I got that, and I devoured it at the time, and I remember loving it. But again, it's one of those albums I go back to now, and it doesn't move me the way other albums do. So I don't know what it was about the time, if it was that idea of getting it new and getting it early. That was a big thing for me. I was like, wow, I'm getting this 2 weeks before everyone else, meaning of the CD,
Yeah.
the cassette release idea. And I'm listening to it. My friends didn't have record players, so everyone was coming over to check it out at my place. Whether it's that nostalgic aspect that makes me love this album, because that's what I think about when I'm listening to it, where I was in '94 and all of that. But
I like Southern Harmony more,
yeah,
but
the song.
I think this record's more. This record is
Yeah.
definitely fits in that classic over
Yeah.
Southern Harmony.
I love.
Southern Harmony was the outside the box. This was a
Yeah.
band coming into their own and making a no frills,
Yeah,
front to back, fuck you record.
Yeah.
Between the cover,
uh-huh.
everything about it.
about this.
Yeah.
I really felt that was also Southern
Hi,
Harmony.
man. How you doing?
Hi. Yeah, so what this album was, for what it was, I think it was a great album. For me, it's one of those ones that when I look back at their catalog and I look at it compared to other things of the era, for me at least, I wouldn't consider this one a classic. I think there's filler on here, but that's just me.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. I don't,
You know,
and that's where I don't think there's a piece of filler on there.
yeah, the first two tracks on here I think are absolutely stellar, and some of the others, Wiser Time, freaking absolutely love
Cursed
that
Diamond
song.
is
yes.
my favorite on there. She gave good sunflower.
I
Bro.
love that one. I know. I wonder what would have been though had they released the Tall album version of this instead.
It would not have done it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
It would have been a year earlier in '93. You think the extra time that they took to do this,
Yeah.
putting it together in '94, and the sound of this, because you now heard Tall.
I do.
Yeah, I don't think there was as much life on that album, but I'm just wondering if a year earlier would it have done more.
I like that one of Mellencamp's guys produced either the Tall or the other session.
Hey, well,
whatever it
talking
was.
about Mellencamp, man.
Oh yeah, let's not forget Dance
But-
Naked in '94.
Yeah, this one came out.
Not a classic, but I love it.
Yeah, definitely not a classic, but it's got
Classic in my heart.
a classic song of his, even though it's a cover, Wild Night. It really reestablished him.
Yeah.
He had a great success all the way up through, what is the album called? whatever we wanted.
Whenever we wanted.
Whenever we wanted, yeah. So that one, he had a number of hits off of it. It was still very successful.
No, there was only barely a hit on there. That was a bigger hit.
I just saw 4 videos on MTV for that.
Yeah, it wasn't, but it didn't pop.
I don't know. I thought it did more than the Daddy album, the one right before. What's it called?
So Dance Naked. We can't do a Mellencamp video because it's going to take forever.
Right. No, we don't have to. But the point is, I felt like this one reestablished him because the album that came out after it, Human Wheels.
Human Wheels was a bigger song than I think some of the things that were on Whenever We Wanted. Because Human Wheels was 93, Whenever We Wanted
and I
was
saw
91.
no videos, heard nothing on the radio. It was I didn't even know it had come out.
That
I
went
just
under
randomly
that went under the radar.
Right.
I don't think Whenever We Want It was as big as
It's certainly
they
not.
wanted it to be, but
Yes.
it was enough that was the reestablishment.
That was like 1990, I think?
91.
91,
after, After Big Daddy, that was the
Right,
reestablishment.
Big Daddy. Yeah, I just mean for the year of 1991, he still managed to have great success
4
and be
videos,
on radio
people were
and yeah,
still selling
talking
out
about
concert
him.
tours. Yeah.
Right. When this came out, that wasn't happening, but the song Wild Night with Michelle Indegocello, did I say it right?
Blew the fuck up.
It was
Indegocello.
huge. Yeah. The rest of the album, not so much, and I really hate the song Dance Naked. I don't know, the idea of it just bothers me.
It's corny,
It's
but
corny.
I love it. I love the record. The Big Jack, the breakout.
Yeah.
Too much
LUV.
of that. I mean, it's all
It was
great.
so short, though. Wasn't this like 35 minutes or something?
Less.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it at that time. I was like, are you kidding me?
It was perfect. It came right in and
Yeah.
out.
So, definitely
what
not
you
a
need, a
classic,
quick
but
dose
an
of-
awesome 1994 album nonetheless. The last one to talk about here, what do you think of this? Are you even
I
a
don't give
fan?
shit about Green Day.
Green Day Dookie, right? This thing exploded. And whether we call it pop punk or what we call it, it really exploded.
Moved a lot of people, and
The
that's what
idea
matters.
of reestablishing, quote, punk music. And it brought a lot of those
Yeah.
alternative bands from the 80s and even some reestablishing some of the 70s bands, making more notoriety. That's where Rancid came from, exploding out of that. Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, just any band that was off kilter like that suddenly had more exposure because of this, in my opinion, at least.
I have no opinion.
Yeah, I know. But I think for what this is,
It did break open
yeah,
some shit.
it broke open. Musically, when I listen to it, I'm like, I don't know. I don't think it
It's
holds
fun.
up.
I mean, it's good. It's a good record.
It's a great record. But is it
and
a
that doesn't mean I
classic?
like it.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to listen to it.
Yeah, I'll know. This is one of those
I
bands
don't want
I'll-
to hear that shit.
I'll never listen to this again.
But now American Idiot, I think, is a perfect record.
But it's in my collection. I
Not
can't
mine.
not have
I
it.
own
No.
Zero Green.
I own it. And, Welcome to Paradise comes on, so I'm going to sing along with it. Still love that song.
It brings
Right.
you back to a time and a
Yeah,
place,
yeah.
but then it puts me back in that time and
Exactly.
place of the things that I
Right,
loved and I
right.
wanted to hear. And,
Yeah.
when you say you don't like things, immediately people are going to say, "Oh, well, you're closed off. You're not listening."
Yeah, right. Oh, we listened to it.
We listened.
We grew up and listened to this inside and
I was
out.
forced
We know
to
this
listen to it. It was
probably
shoved
be-
in my ass.
Yeah. So, it's a classic though. I mean, I think the public would certainly consider this a classic album.
I think it has to be.
Yeah.
I think it falls into the category of a classic album.
It defined 1994. It defined a genre, an era, everything about that. You look at that album and it broke open doors. I don't think we can't not say it's a classic. Some of these
Yeah.
other ones maybe ran under the radar a bit, aren't the biggest albums
Because
from
of
that
we're stuck with
band.
Blink-182.
Yeah,
Thanks.
right. There you go, right. Because of this, if you like this but hate Blink-182, you got to thank Green Day for that. And I don't dislike Blink-182. It's just not really my cup of tea. It's too pop for me. I just liked when they had the Jenna, whatever her name was, on the album cover. The porn star. Yeah, you didn't even get that far with it.
But then again,
Right.
we're back to album covers.
Right.
If you're putting a porn star on an album cover, I'm
Right.
automatically not buying your shit because now you're just trying to sell sex, right?
Yeah.
If I want porn, I would go steal a magazine when I was a
Well-
kid. I would picture it in my head.
So why did you buy this one? This
'Cause
is
it's the Black Crows.
It's the epitome, though, because this was a Hustler image.
I was fucking 14.
That's my
I know-
point.
I didn't know it was a Hustler image.
Yeah.
It was a Hustler image from the 70s.
Yeah,
I was
exactly.
born in 78, so I had no idea. I just
Right.
knew it was a
I
new
didn't-
Black Crowes record.
Right. I didn't know that it was
I
that
liked
at the
Bush.
time.
It had Bush on it.
Right, it was perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, my mom hated that.
Oh, speaking of 94, Bush, their first album came out.
Oh.
16 Stone.
Yeah. And see, would that be considered a classic? It's their biggest album, but I don't know, it just sounded like everything else at the time. Now,
So I don't think I would put anything Bush in classic album, but I love the record.
Yeah, and they're one of those bands that I hated at the time, and I went back later on. This probably only goes back, I don't know, about 10 years whenever they reformed recently. I think their newer stuff is better than the old stuff, but I fell in love with them. I was not a
Still
fan.
good.
I was not a fan of them at the time, but love them. So yeah, there you go. There's another one that I hadn't thought of. So just, it's kind of weird because for me at least, 1994 was a weird era of time. You know, glam metal was over. Classic rock bands like Boston, Styx, stuff like that were starting to come back because the bands or the solo stuff that they were doing in the 80s wasn't cool anymore. So those bands had broken up, like Damn Yankees had. You know, so then these other bands are getting back together. So, and no real time. It was weird. 1994, you know, Kurt had already killed himself at this point. So that,
Nirvana's Unplugged was 94.
yeah, right. Is that a classic album?
Has to be.
Yeah? I don't know. Performance is classic. But certainly. So, I don't know. You guys weigh in on this. Let us know what you think about these albums, other 1994 era albums, and whether the fact any of these are actually classic albums or just albums we like of those bands.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.